A couple weeks ago, I came across this Bashar video. I'm going to put it here so people can go watch it if they want to. But it, a particular part of it, gave me, it was like a paradigm shift. And he talks about a misconception that we often have when we're doing inner work. And it was a paradigm shift for me that also gave me insight into the techniques that I use to do for inner work. And it also gave me an idea for a new technique that I've been trying over the past couple weeks. And it seemingly is very effective. So what he talks about the different levels of consciousness, starting with the oversoul and then working its way down. The important part is he talks about the higher mind, and then he talks about the us, so not like the lower mind, but us, our perspective. And then he talks about this middle ground that he says the higher mind comes down to essentially try to meet us at a certain level, and we can actually go up to that level as well. I forget what he calls it. I think it's the template or something like that. You can watch the video and find out. And he talks about this misconception we have that the most important thing is thoughts and like patterns and stuff. He says that the way that we look at inner work and the way that we like rank what parts of ourselves to look at, we rank thoughts and patterns first, then emotions, and then belief systems. But he says that actually belief systems are first, then emotions, and then thoughts and patterns. He says that in order to evaluate thoughts and patterns, you have to go down, actually. You go down in, like, I don't want to say frequency. He explains it the best, but you have to go down. Take your consciousness down. It's more unconscious. Thoughts and patterns are more unconscious, I guess. And then he says you have to go up in consciousness for emotions and even further up in consciousness for beliefs. When I first heard this, I was like, are our higher minds, because what he said was that the higher mind comes down to the middle ground to work on your belief systems. It comes down to that middle ground in between you and them to work on your belief systems, to like give you your belief systems. And so I was like, and he said that the best way to do inner work on yourself would actually be to go up to work on belief systems and emotions, because if you go down to work on thoughts and patterns, you're actually just reinforcing them. So what's at first when I heard this, I was like, okay, so my higher mind is coming down to deliver me belief systems that are really just screwing my life up, essentially, because that's the whole thing. If you have to do inner work, I was like, my higher mind comes down to deliver me with belief systems that suck. Like, is this some sort of prank? Like, is reality punking us? Is our higher mind just messing with us, delivering these belief systems that are limiting? Because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about if you want to do inner work, he always says you have to first work on your belief systems. So it's like, if our higher mind is coming down to deliver us these belief systems, like, that are essentially providing us with lots of limitations, how is that helpful in any way? And I asked the spirit homies about it, and I was like, so the higher mind creates the belief systems? And they're like, no. They're like, essentially what it is we have the belief systems because of life experiences and all this other stuff. So our belief systems get set based off of our life experiences. And then our higher mind creates, like, essentially mechanisms to deal with our belief systems. And that in order to do the inner work, then yes, you would go up to assess your belief systems, and you would rework your belief systems, why your belief systems are limiting and why they're untrue. Like, how can they be untrue? And then, as Bashar says, there's like a trickle down effect, which also, like, the spirit homies were in agreement. Yes, there will be like a trickle down effect. If you go up, you assess what the belief systems are, and then you do a trickle down effect, right? So I was thinking about how, like, the ways in which first of all, this gives me a whole shift on like the idea of shadow work. And I always talk about shadow work, and I do a lot of inner work. And I was like, so is some of my inner work is unproductive, and there is something that I recognize where, like, I have reworked essentially the belief system, and I keep bringing it up again, and I'm like, oh, is it still there? Is the belief system still there? Do I still need to do work? So I'm assessing my thoughts and patterns, and I call that like looping. Like, I'm looping on the same information even though the issue has already been resolved. So, like, I think that the unproductive part about what I've been doing is maybe like doing this thing where I feel like I always have to be healing, even though I've already done the release, I've already done the reworking of the belief system. And now I'm just like, every time I feel a ping, instead of going, this is no longer a part of my belief system, and reinforcing that, I go, oh, is there more work that needs to be done? Should I be checking out my limiting thought patterns, and then like instead of doing any more work, it's actually just creating more of a feedback loop because I'm still on the, I'm still, even though I've worked the issue out, I'm still going back on the every time it comes up, instead of going, nope, we're going to cut that off, that's not a part of my belief system anymore. Instead of doing that, I have on occasion, too much for my liking, been like, oh, this must mean that more work needs done, maybe I should assess my thought patterns. But based off of what like Bashar says and also the information that I asked for, yes, that would be creating a loop. And it's kind of like it was a clarifier and a validator for me, because whenever that happens, I do go back and forth in my head between, I don't want to repress emotions, so I don't want to just be like, oh, this isn't real, but I also don't want to loop on it over and over for no reason. And I feel like when there is like the release and you've reworked the belief system, it is then okay to just be like, nah, we're good. And I mean, I feel like that's an intuitive call that a lot of people would have to make. But I learned that the looping thing that I do is ineffective and just causes more bringing it up for no reason. And I was trying to assess, because I did ask, I was like, are there ways that I do inner work that are already going up to assess my belief systems? I asked about it and I got a yes. An example would be inner child work. So, and it's funny because I always feel like I'm doing inner child work wrong, because I think this is how that is assessing belief systems, the way that I do it. I feel like I do it wrong because I go in with the intent of identifying my inner child's belief system and why they're providing me with this belief system. I wouldn't have called it belief system before. I would have just described it as like, when I do inner child work, I go in to talk to my inner child to assess the situation and see what's going on in my unconscious for my inner child. And that, I think, is what I'm doing, is I'm trying to find the belief system that my inner child created based off of experiences. And I always feel like I'm doing it wrong because like that's my intention. My intention is not, oh, go hang out with my inner child. But I do have some sessions now where I just like do hang out with my inner child and my inner child enjoys it. So I don't think it matters that much. But I then consciously decided that I was going to do some inner child work to like intentionally go assess belief systems around a certain topic. So I went in and I like did my normal stuff, and then I just got this idea which created this new thing that I've been doing for the last week or so, which has been very effective. I was doing inner child work, I was sitting with my inner child, and then I just had this idea like pop into my head, which the best ideas always just pop into your head randomly while you're doing some sort of meditation or inner work, I swear. Where I was like, oh, I'm gonna imagine going up to my middle ground and just go straight to the source. So I was like, hey, inner child, do you want to come with me? Which that's the only time that my inner child has come with me, because after that I was like, it's not really worth it. But in the moment I was like, all right, you're already here, so let's go together. So I imagined, I was in like enough of a meditative state that I was able to easily imagine this. I imagined walking up stairs like for a long time until I get to this like conference room where I just imagined this is the middle ground where I can meet my higher mind. And I was just like, higher mind, excuse me, I would like you to deliver me the files surrounding what belief systems are causing these particular behaviors and emotions and thought patterns. And like literally it showed up as files in like a spinning, like there was like a thing on the table, and there was like, it was like one of those things, like a circular thing that you can spin, and there was like different files on the table in envelopes or in like folders, and I was able to just one by one be like, okay, what's this one? And the first one was so simple, because I was like, give it to me. I was like, there were a lot of files, so I was like, give it to me in order. I was just being so straightforward with my higher mind. I was like, give it to me in order of greatest importance to least importance. And I'll tell you, so the issue that I was working on was insecurities dealing with like having something to prove or needing validation or needing to be seen as like some sort of like, we all have, I feel like we have this thing, especially with the whole uniqueness movement, and I do believe every single person is unique and every single person does have their very own special sauce to add to the collective. But I feel like sometimes that gets interpreted as if you're not first, you're last, and like it works into our subconscious. So I was having this thing where like consciously I'm understanding that that is not the case, that every single person has something unique to offer, and that's okay, and there doesn't have to be like a ranking system. but unconsciously my inner child was fucking pissed, and my inner child kept putting this shit, and I knew it wasn't me because like, or like I knew it wasn't like my conscious adult mind, because my conscious adult mind understood the circumstances, but there was just like this child part of me that was like throwing a temper tantrum in my head and like feeling insecure and all this other stuff. So I went up, I climbed up with my inner child. I'm like, all right, it's take your kid to work day. I literally said that in my head. And we sat down and I asked for the files of belief systems surrounding this issue in order from greatest importance to least importance. And the first one was a thick file, but all it said was object permanence. Okay. And so to me, the way that I take that is ADHD people have like a different form of object permanence issues. So babies have this object permanence or object impermanence thing, where why people play peekaboo with them, because babies have this thing where if they don't see it, it doesn't exist. ADHD people have that as well. You know, a lot of times we're throwing rotting food out of our fridge because we stuck it in the back of the fridge and we literally forgot that it existed. I have to, if I don't pre-plan what I'm eating, I will forget what foods exist and what foods I like, and I will eat the same thing for like a week straight or more because I'm just like, I don't even know what else exists. Like I'm racking my brain trying to think of what to make because I forget what food exists. So the first thing was object permanence. And when you're in a meditative state and you're just like allowing things to flow, in my experience, things just come in, and whether it's like, it can be symbolic, it can be metaphorical, it can be an analogy, but it will just make sense to you in that meditative state. So when I got the thick file and it said object permanence, I was like, okay, so a big part of this is the ADHD, which is telling me if you're not first or last, if you are not being observed, if you're not being observed, you don't exist, is kind of what it is. Like, if you are not currently getting attention or being observed, then you don't exist, you don't matter, you aren't important. So it was like telling me that my object permanence or impermanence, I don't know how you say it, my object permanence from ADHD also affected my security level. So then all I had to say was, like, then you rework the belief system. You go, okay, now because there's another thing that happens, and I learned this in hypnosis school. When you are in a meditative hypnotic state, that is when you can tell your subconscious mind, I don't believe this, I actually believe this, and your subconscious mind will listen and implant it. If you're in a critical conscious state, so a waking state, and you try to say, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, you're not in direct communication with your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind will not like sink it in as easily as it will if you're in a meditative it's the same thing, hypnotic state. So when I was given the information, I was then able to just, and this is how I do it pretty much every time, I was able to just go, okay, why do I believe that that's actually not how reality works? Like, why do I believe that that's an irrational thing and it doesn't work? And then I'm just like, okay, if I'm not being observed, that doesn't mean I don't exist. And then I can even go, like, I went so far as to be like, from my perspective, if I'm not observing something, it doesn't exist. But most people who don't have ADHD, if they're not observing something, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They don't forget about it, like I forget about it. So my expectations are unrealistic. And on top of that, just because you're not seeing something doesn't mean it actually doesn't exist. So then I just like tell my belief system, like while I'm in there, I'm like, okay, yeah, we can rework this. Like essentially I'm in the conference room, I'm reading through the files, and I'm like, this is how we're gonna make adjustments. This is why this is incorrect. Belief system reworked. And I swear to God, I've done it like 3 or 4 times in the last week or so. And it has stopped because there's like the thought patterns that still pop up, and they probably pop up until you tell them enough times this isn't true. And there's a difference, a viable, like feelable, visceral difference between thought patterns and between your inner child having a temper tantrum. Because when my inner child is having a temper tantrum, it literally feels like I'm an adult with a child inside of me screaming and crying, and I'm saying, it's okay, it's fine, it doesn't matter. But my inner child is going, yes, it does matter, because fuck them, and fuck this, and fuck that, everything sucks, everyone's out to get me. It feels like an actual child having a temper tantrum, right? Like it feels like it's foreign to me, but it's inside of me, and I'm the parent, I'm like in a conscious state of mind, but I'm trying to correct it. So like, since doing that for those specific issues that were bothering me at this time, it has definitely made it so that my inner child is not freaking out. And I go in and check on her too. Like whenever there's an issue that I'm working out, I go check on my inner child. I'll like just pop in once or twice a day and be like, "Hey kid, how you doing?" And she's usually doing fine. And like when the thought patterns have come up, I haven't had the visceral feelings, and I haven't had like, I've just had the thought patterns, and then I go, okay, no, we don't believe that. And then it's like, okay, we don't believe that. It's fine. And so I've just been able to like course correct. So it has been super effective for me. And I feel like it's just like sometimes doing the easiest and most direct thing is the most simple. You know what I mean? But I also feel like it worked hand in hand with like the inner child work and the going up to the middle ground to talk to my higher mind and assess my belief systems. Like I feel like those two things worked together really well for me to get some inner work done in a very timely manner, like a week or so, like I said. And at this point, I've been in like a pretty serious hermit mode, primarily doing inner work, honestly, for the last on and off for 6 years. So I got a pretty good gauge that these methods are like, I feel like the paradigm shift that happened from this Bashar video of him explaining, and again, I'm going to say it, he says that going down to assess thought patterns and behaviors and stuff like that, he says those things are automatic and unconscious. And we think that they're the most conscious, but they're actually the least conscious and the most automatic. He says going down to do them only reinforces them. Going up to assess your belief systems and your emotions is how you effectively do inner work. And I feel like applying that to the methods that I use has honestly, like, I've got a pretty good gauge, and it feels like, I mean, I'll come back in a month or so and verify, but it feels like it was so effective, like such a paradigm shift. And there's also another technique that I often use that I also think goes to the emotions thing, and I call it follow the feeling. And it's this thing where, so I have, like, my strongest clair has always been feeling. I thought it was clairsentience, and I think clairsentience is part of it, but there's also something called energy sensing that I think most of it actually is, where you literally like feel energy as if it's a physical feeling in your body. And so I do this thing called follow the feeling, where whenever I have a destructive or unpleasant thought pattern, behavior, anything like that, I like freeze frame it, isolate it, and then I like feel into my body to feel how that energy feels. And then I just picture myself following that energy with the intention that eventually the insight on why I feel that way is going to just hit me. Like, it's just going to pop up. So say, let me think of an example. I have two examples that are like kind of direct opposites, but it has played out for me in so many different ways, and it can play out in a bunch of different ways. But these are the two main examples. Probably about a year ago, I think I was doing work with people pleasing and why I'm a people pleaser and stuff like that. Because here's the thing. With all of this stuff, you can consciously, logically, intellectually understand something and not embody it. So I've really been trying to develop ways to like embody things. And these are the methods that I'm talking about. But so like a year ago, I was doing inner work on people pleasing, and I knew like, okay, I do it from a place of like emotional insecurity and needing blah, 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 all this other stuff. And so I had a people pleasing behavior, and I stopped, I isolated it, I felt into it. What does it feel like? I imagined that I was following the feeling. Like, I just essentially make the feeling stronger and stronger and stronger with the intention that it will lead me to some sort of insight that is helpful. And in that particular moment, it actually took me to a childhood memory. And I can't remember the childhood memory, but it was something having to do with an emotionally unstable member of my family. So it took me to a memory of an instance where I felt that the only safe option was to people please. So that was like an insight. And then those insights happened. And then, like I said, in that state, from there, I'm able to be like, what can we do differently? How is this not effective anymore? And like kind of rewrite the script. And another example that happened more recently, it was when I was having like my inner child was having temper tantrums. And it was doing this thing, actually it was for a different reason. The last like 2 months, I've been doing crazy amounts of inner child work because I've had another tower moment that I won't go into specifically, but another like, oh shit moment where just a bunch of pieces come crumbling down. And so this inner child work had to do, like, my inner child was doing this thing where it kept being like, poor me, poor me, poor me. Why do I have to work so hard? And everybody else has to, like, doesn't have to work as hard as I do, and if I don't work as hard, I get punished, or I get this, or I get that, I get like I don't get, you know, and but other people can just kind of skate by in life, and da 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 da. Like, so my inner child was having temper tantrums, and so I stopped. I isolated the feeling. I followed the feeling with the intent that the insight was going to pop up, and it and this is how it usually happens for me. It's usually not a memory that comes up. It's usually just this like insight that has no words attached to it. It was just like this instant inner knowing that, like, oh, I have a belief. I do have a belief that I have to like work harder than, like, I have to work really hard. I have to hold myself to impossible standards in order to achieve anything. And that belief is actually not true. Like, that belief is actually incorrect. And it wasn't, and I like reworked the belief, and it hasn't bothered me since. But actually, since then, I've been, because like I'm that person when I'm at work that is like doing 5 different jobs all the time because I feel like I have to. If there is something that needs done and I see it, I have to do it, because if I don't do it, I'm not doing my job. And I'm that person at work that's like constantly stressed out because I have 5 planets in Capricorn, can you tell? Because I'm just like, I have to get it done or nobody else will, and da 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 da, and then I burn myself out, and then blah 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 blah. And so I like had this realization, oh yeah, I do hold myself to impossibly high standards. And I even told myself, like, I in the moment I was like reminding myself of situations that I got mad about, like I got mad at other people about, because I'm like, how can they get away with this and I can't? And then I just went, you probably actually could get away with it. You're just holding yourself to impossibly high standards. Like, you are doing this to yourself. You don't have to do this. And I don't know what created it, and there's no need for me to know what created it. Like, sometimes there's no need for you to figure out what, like, trauma or whatever caused the situation. I just understood in that moment, oh, I hold myself to impossibly high standards, and I assume that if I don't follow them, I will be punished. But this is not the case. This is not true. And since then, I actually have just naturally advocated for myself more at work, to where I'm like, there's situations where previously I would have been like, oh yeah, I'll do it even though I'm doing 5 other things. But now I'm just like, actually, I'm working on this. I can't take care of that right now. Sorry. So just kind of like, and that's the thing, like, releasing it then also naturally has like a trickle down effect on your behavior. But all of this rant to say, going up for, and I highly recommend you go find this video. I'm going to put it here again, because going up to assess your belief systems and your emotions has proven in the last week or so way, 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 way more effective. And I've been able to play with it a lot more than going down to assess my thought patterns and automatic behaviors. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, bye.